And yesterday, in an answer to Senator Kennedy, you said the FBI is not in possession of any credible evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone but himself. So according to your testimony yesterday and in this committee, according to the evidence the FBI has, the number of names on the list are zero.
No,
zero.
The index has been released, and the number of people involved in that trafficking operation were charged in 2008.
Other than Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, your testimony in the Senate and here is that according to the evidence you have, the number of other names is zero.
That were charged based on credible evidence.
Well, who are the other names? Give me the other names that weren't charged.
We are not releasing the names of anyone because the Department of Justice never does that of anyone that didn't have any credible information to attack.
What happens when the man who promised to expose the system becomes the system? What happens when the loudest voice demanding accountability suddenly goes quiet when it matters most? Because what you're about to see isn't just another political moment. It's a turning point that raises serious questions about power, promises, and the truth the public was told to expect. With a stack of documents in hand, Congressman Jared Moskowitz stood up and hit Kash Patel with a devastating question. One that didn't just challenge his credibility, it exposed something deeper. Something unsettling. He questioned whether Patel even understood the very constitution he swore to defend. And in that moment, the room changed. The energy shifted. The tension became undeniable. The man who once claimed he would be the strongest defender of due process in FBI history was suddenly being told, point blank, that he hadn't even read one of the most basic protections in the Bill of Rights. Let that sink in. And instead of owning it, instead of confronting it head-on, Patel deflected. He leaned on technicalities. He avoided the core issue. And what came next? It only made things worse. Because now the question isn't just about one answer in a hearing room. It's bigger than that. It's about whether the FBI under Patel is still committed to defending the Constitution, or if it's quietly shifting toward protecting power instead.
Disgusting. There are lots of names, lots of co-conspirators, and they're trafficking girls all across the world. I mean, it's exactly as people thought it was. It's that, and more, unfortunately.
And what you're about to see next will make that question even more disturbing. But first, I want you to think about something. Take a step back with me for just a second. Breaking news. Kash Patel is nominated to be FBI Director. DanBongino is nominated as the number 2. The reaction? Immediate. Loud. Mega circles celebrate. Supporters rejoice. The narrative begins to build fast. This was the team that went from podcast to podcast, microphone to microphone, promising something explosive. The EpsteinList. The names would finally be revealed. The truth, they said, would finally come out. There was anticipation. There was hype. There was belief. Then came the rollout. White binders. Phase 1. Carefully staged moments with influencers. A symbolic show of transparency. The idea that something massive was about to be exposed. Of course, some of it looked theatrical. Even exaggerated. But people bought into it. They believed this was just the beginning. Then suddenly, everything changed. A memo drops. Quietly. Almost casually. And it says, there is no list. No incriminating names. No major revelations. Phase 2. It never happens. It disappears before it even begins. The same voices that once fueled the conspiracy now dismiss it. They say it was never real. That it was misunderstood. That the entire narrative people followed so closely just doesn't hold up anymore. But here's the problem, that timeline isn't speculation. It's not opinion. It's public record. And when you line it up, date by date, step by step, something becomes impossible to ignore. Patel's 0 names answer stops looking like a legal conclusion, and starts looking like the final chapter of a promise that slowly collapsed in front of everyone. Before taking office, Patel and Bongino built massive followings by turning the Epstein scandal into a rallying cry. They talked about accountability. About powerful people escaping justice. About exposing the truth. But once in power, everything narrowed. Everything slowed down. Everything became cautious. In February 2025, Attorney General Pam Bondi goes on national television and says the Epstein client list is sitting on her desk.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files.
Days later, influencers are handed binders labeled Epstein Files Phase 1 inside the West Wing. It's presented as a historic moment. Then July 2025 arrives. A joint DOJ FBI memo declares there is no credible client list. No evidence of blackmail. No reason for further disclosure. Just like that, it's over. The very promise that built reputations, gone. Behind the scenes. Reports suggest internal fallout. Tensions. Even frustration from within the administration itself. Senate Democrats, led by Dick Durbin, demand answers. Watchdogs file complaints. Allegations surface that information was limited, narrowed, controlled.
We've reviewed all the information, and the American public is going to get as much as we can release.
And this is where things take a sharper turn. Because this isn't just about policy anymore. It's about consistency. It's about credibility. When Patel and his allies were outside the system, Epstein's network represented everything wrong with elite power. But now, from the inside, that same scandal is reduced to technical language. Legal thresholds. Narrow interpretations. And that double standard. It's dangerous. Because when it comes to political opponents, there's no hesitation. No delay. But when it comes to one of the most disturbing trafficking cases in modern history, suddenly, the approach becomes careful. Controlled. Limited. Victims don't need technicalities. They need truth. They need justice. And that's when the story shifts again, this time to something even more explosive. A signature. A document. And a question that should have triggered immediate action.
Let me move forward. The president you've seen the picture of the woman's body with the writing and the president's signature. The president says that's not his. Okay? The president says it's not his. The Republican colleagues say it's not his. The administration say it's not his. Will you be opening up an investigation into the Epstein estate for putting out a fake document with the president's signature linking him to the world's largest pedophile ring? Will you be opening that investigation into that?
On what basis?
On what basis? They literally put out a fake document, according to the president, with a fake signature. It's a forgery of the president of the United States signature. That's the basis.
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay, I look forward to that investigation. Am I over? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your diligence.
Gentleman's time has expired.
4 words. Delivered almost casually. But they might be the most revealing moment of the entire hearing. Because in that instant, Kash Patel showed exactly who he is now. Not the outsider. Not the disruptor. But someone at the center of power. Moskowitz wasn't asking for speculation. He wasn't making accusations. He was asking for an investigation into a potential federal crime, a forged signature tied to the President of the United States, connected to Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday book. And the President himself called it fake. Think about that. That's not politics. That's a clear basis for investigation. But Patel's first response. On what basis? That hesitation speaks volumes. Because here's what's already known. In July 2025, reports surfaced about a birthday scrapbook compiled for Epstein. Inside it, a letter bearing Donald Trump's name, surrounded by a drawing and ending with a mysterious line. Trump denied it. Strongly. Called it fake. Filed a massive lawsuit. But then the narrative evolved. Maybe it wasn't his words. Maybe it wasn't his drawing. Maybe the signature was forged. Even the White House suggested forensic analysis. But here's where things get complicated. Independent reviews, from major outlets, compared that signature with decades of Trump's handwriting. Letters. Notes. Documents. And they found similarities. Striking ones.
If there are forgeries or forgers out there, I think we should investigate it. And in fact, this document is 22 years old. So you're telling me someone 22 years ago went back to the future and forged his signature when he was a Democrat.
Even CNN found matching patterns in past correspondence. Now, Does that prove anything definitively? No. But does it justify an investigation? Absolutely. And that's why Patel's hesitation matters. Because this is someone who built a public image around aggressively pursuing fraud, leaks, and conspiracies. Yet when presented with a specific, evidence-backed request involving the most powerful office in the country, he hesitates. Only after pressure does he respond with a quick, almost dismissive, "Sure, I'll do it." Not urgency. Not commitment. Just a placeholder. And even Moskowitz seemed to recognize it, ending with a line that felt less like politeness, and more like a warning. "I look forward to that investigation." Because there's a pattern here. Reports suggest that uncomfortable questions often get acknowledged publicly, and then quietly disappear. Lawsuits from FBI agents. Allegations of retaliation. Leadership turmoil. And no clear follow-up.
Convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell says she will testify openly to lawmakers about her longtime associate Jeffrey Epstein if President Trump grants her clemency. Maxwell is currently serving a 20-year sentence. She testified virtually today to the House Oversight Committee, pleading the Fifth, refusing to answer questions, something Committee Chairman James Comer called, quote, very disappointing. Her appearance and bargain for clemency comes as lawmakers were today allowed to review an unredacted version of the Epstein files.
They saw the names of at least 6 individuals, 6 men, names who that were redacted, that they expressed some concern about, including one that they indicated could be high up in a foreign government. So obviously we're expecting to hear from the Attorney General later this week before the House Judiciary Committee. They say they intend to ask the Attorney General why some of those names were redacted. But that is something that we have heard from several lawmakers who have had an opportunity to view these unredacted documents, why it appears that some names were redacted in the case of the release of these files. So obviously more to come, but certainly many revelations coming on this first day after lawmakers having that opportunity to view them.
And how are members of Congress reacting to Ghislaine Maxwell's appearance today and her request for clemency in exchange for testimony?
Well, it was expected, although the chair of the committee, James Comer, expressed disappointment that Ghislaine Maxwell did invoke the Fifth Amendment. Obviously, many lawmakers were prepared to ask her questions and certainly see her as a central figure in terms of Jeffrey Epstein and, his sex trafficking ring. So there were a lot of questions that lawmakers wanted to get at but were unable to since she invoked the Fifth. So for that reason, obviously, this was a very short deposition. It was a virtual deposition. And some lawmakers, too, expressing concern about this request for clemency. Both Chair Comer said he did not believe that Ghislaine Maxwell should have any type of immunity, especially after, hearing from some survivors who requested that. And also, many Democrats as well felt that this was really just an opportunity for Maxwell and her attorney to try to plead their case for clemency when, they feel this should have been an opportunity to get at the facts of the case.
So now we have to ask, what changed? Because this is the same man who once promised to expose everything. To bring powerful figures into the light. To challenge the system. Now? 0 names. Collapsed promises. Delayed investigations. And that transformation isn't unique. It's something we've seen before in Washington. And I want to hear from you. Do you think this is caution, or something deeper? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Because the next chapter of this story might be the most revealing yet.